Hello, Hare Krishna. My name is Jvalamukhi dasi. In these troubled times, people are looking for answers, but more importantly, they're seeking safety, a place to take shelter from the scary, insane things that are going on around us in the world today. And for many, this is a return to their shelter, their faith in God, their religious roots. With a mess this big, where else can you go? The world is so crazy right now. Turn on the news, look anywhere. It's just complete insanity. The purpose of this video is to invite sincere seekers to the very real shelter of the teachings of our Creator, God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, as purely presented by His great servant, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. In essence, the Lord teaches us the eternality of the soul, the purpose of human life, and our common interest in knowing and loving Him. Then the whole world can be harmonious and happy. Simply put, there are no material solutions for material problems. There are only spiritual ones. We have a spiritual problem and we need to get to the root of it. Srila Prabhupada presents Lord Krishna's message as it is, making clear the original absolute truth upon which all world religions have reflected only in part, but which is now presented in full in the books by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He wrote these based on the commentaries of all the previous masters. It's a great, great science and can be understood and reconcile all the dualities. Just read his books and you will see. This is not a statement of opinion, but when you understand the scope of his teachings, this puts together a huge puzzle piece of so many different aspects of religion, of the science of God. Please do yourself a favor and just pick one up and read them. But in the same way that we are now seeing many of our heroes, the people that we've looked up to, like sports figures, actors, politicians, business giants, newscasters, people that we know, love, and respect in the public eye, we're seeing many of them being exposed for the liars, the cheaters, the pedophiles, and even worse, that they really are. In the same way, false religious leaders are being exposed as some of the very, very worst offenders. In the name of God, they betray their followers, causing huge damage to their victims, even causing a loss of faith that there is a God at all. What greater tragedy, what greater betrayal could there possibly be for the soul? Today, I would like to separate truth from lies and state things bluntly, something I'm pretty good at. Real truth does exist. It is all right here in Srila Prabhupada's books and his lectures. All you have to do is go to the internet, look up Srila Prabhupada's books, his lectures, and listen, and suddenly the heart finds shelter, finds peace, finds fearlessness. And what greater gift could there possibly be than fearlessness in this age of complete fear? Srila Prabhupada spoke very strongly against the hypocrisy in modern society. And we find that this is the last leg of Dharma in this age, truth. And truth is coming out all over the place, especially nowadays. People are waking up and they want to know what is real, what is the truth. Srila Prabhupada inspired many thousands and thousands of people who were materially disenchanted to take up the pure practice of spiritual life and to live in integrity with God and in harmony with one another. He founded hundreds of communities and inspired his followers to distribute millions and millions of his books. He brought a spiritual, cultural revolution called the Hare Krishna movement. Who doesn't know about the Hare Krishna movement? It just simply exploded on the scene. And it offers an oasis in a desert of a world gone completely mad. But after his disappearance, the organization he founded to spread the message of God, like so many other organizations of this material world, it fell under the control of people who did not purely represent him, people who were materially motivated, people who equated position and power with spiritual leadership. That if they were in the position of guru, of leader, that somehow that was the goal instead of actual purity of heart. the welfare of their followers. They dismantled and betrayed practically all of what Srila Prabhupada started, even in a covert way, so that people wouldn't realize what they were doing. When innocent new people are presented with his books, one of the greatest tragedies is that instead of feeling safe to read them, they look at the history of the organization that he founded. It's called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or God Consciousness, called ISKCON. They associate Srila Prabhupada with the nonsense that has gone on in his name, or by his so-called followers. In this co-opted organization, there is a history of child abuse, continued cover-up of it, abuse of women, of cows, money laundering, misuse, yes, and even murder. Not a very safe place to repose one's heart, one might say. But these criminals and the criminals that, but the crimes and the criminals that committed them have absolutely nothing to do with the founder, Srila Prabhupada, nothing at all. The current organization, called ISKCON, no longer represents his mood, not his mission, and not his teachings. The Hare Krishna movement, Movement, the Hare Krishna movement and ISKCON are no longer one and the same thing. And I'm going to say that again. The Hare Krishna movement, founded by the Supreme Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that cannot be stopped, that is destined to be in every town and village all over the world. It is no longer the same as the organization that was founded to propound the teachings. The message that Srila Prabhupada came to give this whole world cannot any longer be held back because it is associated with what people may perceive as a deviant cult, based on the crimes of those who posed as spiritual leaders, but who are in fact unscrupulous rascals. And I state this very, very mildly. Srila Prabhupada's name must be separated from all of the cheating and the lies that have gone on in his name so that people can know the difference. The real shelter of his lotus feet must be offered to those in need without any fear of being cheated once again. This is my purpose in making this video. My dear friend, my mentor, Kamra Prabhu, wrote an essay that I shared as a link in my previous video, but I feel the need to read it out loud because a lot of people don't take the time to go through and read articles, especially when their lives are really busy and life's pretty crazy. So I want to read it out loud to you. It is called Not in His Name, referring to Srila Prabhupada. Kamra Prabhu is a direct disciple of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. And in the same way that the teachings of Lord Jesus are rarely reflected when you go to the churches or when you look at his professed followers, so in the same way, the organization ISKCON no longer reflects the pure teachings and intentions of what Srila Prabhupada founded it upon. In the same way, those who are really sincere, people who want to follow the teachings of Lord Jesus, they have to separate what has been done in his name from what he truly taught. Not so easy task. In the same way, for thoughtful and intelligent people, we must separate Srila Prabhupada from the nonsense that is going on in his name, and in the process remain pure, remain strict, not create new ideas and deviations or throw the baby out with the bathwater. I was born into ISKCON in 1976, and my peers and I are known as the second generation of devotees or Gurukulis. Srila Prabhupada exuded such genuine love for us, the children of the Hare Krishna movement. He was warm, he was loving, and always very, very kind. He called us his Vaikuntha children, which means something very, very special. He had high hopes that we would be trained with love in Krishna consciousness, with the highest spiritual values and principles, so that one day by our pure character, by our example, the way that we led our lives, just our beingness, that we would naturally become leaders of society. those from the second generation who are old enough to have had the great fortune of interacting with Srila Prabhupada personally, they've told me they remember the incredible spiritual loving exchanges that they cherish still to this day, just completely profound, soul to soul, looking at them even when they were 2, 3, 4 years old and having amazing, amazing revelations that would not be normal for any toddler to have. But when Srila Prabhupada looked at you, when he had interactions with you, you were a spirit soul eternally. You weren't the body. Sadly, those who took forcible control of the organization had a much different agenda for us in mind, the children. Their attitude was very apparent even before Srila Prabhupada left the planet. Srila Prabhupada said, with much sadness, that when I am gone, there will be no more protection for the women and children. And unfortunately, he was right, of course, as usual. Now it's been 40 years later. I am still healing from the abuse that I went through as a child by the disguised demons dressed as devotees who are still in disguise and who are still dressed as devotees and who are still receiving worship and being respected. What to do? Life in the material world. Through the help of my friend and my mentor, I am now able to separate the dark from the light. I'm able to separate truth from illusion. But many of my peers are not so fortunate. Many have committed suicide or turned to intoxication, self-sabotage, rather than face the pain inside. It's not an easy thing to live with. Kamra Prabhu has taken the healing facilitation of the second generation as her service to her spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. She is trying to clear his name from all of the atrocities that have gone on in his name and under the name of the organization that he founded, ISKCON. A person once asked me, why would you still want to be a Hare Krishna if you went through all of this? But I responded, there's nothing worth living for if you don't have Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and I feel that way genuinely. I'm a mother of 4 children. I have one on the way. And it is my dearest heart's ambition for them, my greatest prayer. What I want to give my children is what I received from the mercy and the teachings, the mood, the mission. I want to pass this mission on down to them. The greatest service that I could do is by my example to not let all of what the demons did to me reflect on Srila Prabhupada, because it's not true. I read to them every night from Srila Prabhupada's books. They listen to his lectures. And I'm very straight with them about the difference between the Hare Krishna movement and the co-opted organization, ISKCON. And let me tell you, it's not easy. He gave simply everything worth living for. He came to save the whole planet. He came to remind us of who we really are and what life is really about anyways. These eternal teachings are what the world needs most, especially right now. Again, there are no material solutions for the crazy mess that we're in, only spiritual ones, because at the root of all of it is a forgetfulness of who we are. All these crazy things are going on because people are ill-motivated. They don't understand their own benefit. And so they perform all these nefarious activities thinking that they're going to be happy, but they won't be. These teachings give freedom from all fear. These teachings will unite everyone on the platform of the soul and bring us all back to sanity, simple living, and high thinking. The purpose of human life is to know and to love God. As Lord Jesus said, learn to love thy Lord thy God with all thy might, all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. And this is the Hare Krishna movement in a nutshell. This is Krishna consciousness. These teachings are universal. They're non-dogmatic, non-sectarian, and very, very authoritative and scientific, completely logical. One of my favorite things about Krishna consciousness is that you can have a debate, if you want to go there, with anyone in the world, and just with the absolute truth. Even a child can defeat some big scholar because it's so simple, it's so scientific, it's as easy as the sky is blue. You know why the sky is blue? Krishna's blue. I mean, real simple things like that. Or point to yourself. Where are you? You're the soul. You're in the body. Very, very simple and scientific. These teachings are meant for the benefit of all living beings. This is why the envious demons tried so hard to destroy Srila Prabhupada's efforts from the inside, and so pollute our minds and hearts with their lies and their perversions that we would equate religion with irreligion, truth with darkness, hate for love, and ultimately their biggest ambition was for us to reject and hate ourselves like they hate themselves, and reject God just like they do. But people are waking up. We don't want what they want. We want God. The whole world is looking for God right now. And what a blessing. What the world needs most is God consciousness. This God consciousness is synonymous with Krishna consciousness. Why? Because God is a person, the greatest person. He alone can resolve the greatest obstacles that we face. How can we love him if we don't even know who he is? Thus, this Krishna consciousness movement is urgently, urgently needed. And our humble attempt is to start over again, to present these teachings purely, without the deviations, without all of the atrocities associated with the organization. We have started a website called purelyprabhupada.com to try to give, in our simple way, the original books of His Divine Grace, and to answer questions for beginners to understand really what this is and how they can benefit from it. Now, please hear this essay, Not in His Name, written by my dear friend and mentor, Kamra Prabhu, and it will make everything much more clear. It's a history of how she came to the movement, what happened to her, and what to do now. There's a lot of people asking, what do we do now? So we're doing now what needs to be done now. We're starting over. So I'm going to be reading this. It's a little lengthy. I will have it posted here with a link. You can read it, but otherwise just sit back and listen. Not in His Name by Kamra Devi Dasi. My name is Karen Ava Silverstein. I was also given the name Kamra Devi Dasi by Srila Prabhupada in December of 1974. From the time I was very young, I understood that I was God's child. I knew that I had taken birth from a certain mother and a certain father. And I even voiced it to her, that I had come from her belly, but that I was God's child. She wasn't too happy about that, and neither was my father. From an early age, I was asking, what is the meaning of life? Where do I go when I die? How did I get a female body? And how did someone else get a male body or a dog body? Why am I suffering? How we all have these opinions. And what is God's supreme opinion? I asked the rabbis, the ministers, the priests, the college professors, and so on. And no one could answer anything until I met the disciples of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. At that time, Jayadvaita Swami may remember how I came to the Henry Street Temple in the spring of 1974, after speaking on the phone for hours with Shravaniya, crying so hard that I had finally found the meaning of life. Dukkha Hantri may recall how I cried, knowing that I had finally found something to which I could wholeheartedly apply myself for real spiritual progress, even though it may be difficult. From my early years, I examined things, questioned things, and I challenged speakers of so-called truth. In the first grade, my teacher was introducing the concept of fractions. She drew a big circle on the chalkboard, put a line through the center of it, and asked me in front of the class, Karen, is this a half? I replied to her that it was more or less a half, and she got livid. More or less a half? I answered that only the most calibrated piece of equipment could tell if there were more molecules of space on one side or the other. I couldn't understand why she got so incredibly angry at my reply. It made for an unpleasant rest of the year with her. Later on, I had several of my college professors tell me that they were scared of me from the first day of the semester. I became well known for finding the mistakes in the textbooks. I was always a straight shooter, and especially once I came under Srila Prabhupada's shelter, backed with absolute knowledge, I had even more purpose in my questioning. I wanted truth. I wanted spiritual progress. And when I saw something amiss in the Hare Krishna temples, I tried to do something about it for the sake of keeping the purity in Srila Prabhupada's institution. Usually, that went unappreciated and got me in some kind of trouble with the management. I never did well with hypocrisy. When I was teaching at the school in Lake Huntington, New York, I became aware that the management was bringing on a known child molester as a staff. I protested, naively thinking that my input would be appreciated. After much tense back and forth with the headmaster, temple president, I was asked if I valued my life. It was such a shock that I forgot about the statement until many years later. At the time, I went to several GBC men and the Minister of Education. I was told to stop criticizing the temple president and cooperate with him. Funny how within a few days of the initial interaction with the temple president, someone shot an arrow from a hunting bow from behind one of the buildings that zoomed just past my face. As a further token of appreciation for my concern for the children and for the purity of Srila Prabhupada's mission, I was drugged and horribly, indescribably brutalized in the most unspeakable of ways by an organized group of so-called ISKCON leaders. I was thrown onto a concrete floor, kicked in the ribs by one of the alleged gurus, who told me that if I ever challenged his authority again, he would break my neck. Considering the other unmentionable things that went on, this was one of the minor episodes of this event. This type of horrendous thing happened several times more in the years following, and it was not just ISKCON organizational leaders who were involved, but they were side by side with prominent people of the political and the church world. It was such a cognitive dissonance, such an incomprehensible betrayal of my motherhood and my dedicated relationship with Srila Prabhupada, to witness and experience these devotee impersonators, leading members of the organization, men and women, acting in this demonic way, that there was no dealing with it, no one to talk to, and I went amnesic over it for many years. My health failed, and I did not know from moment to moment for many, many long years if I was dying at any second. My children hardly knew a well mother. I was criticized and demeaned for my physical and emotional collapse, especially by those who perpetrated the evil. One of them, who later went on to get a degree in mental health sciences and became a great proponent of the false memory syndrome, said to me, "You used to be a nice devotee. What happened to you?" I have prayed for them in the past out of my compassion for them, knowing to some extent the suffering that lies ahead for them. There is a difference between accidental fall down, which can be excused, and premeditated torture and abuse. For one who has knowledge, the consequences of sinful activities are greater than for one in ignorance of God's laws. My prayers are now different, that they may be caught with their pants down for the sake of the truth being known, and that they may die inglorious deaths with no more fake samadhis and false glorifications for the sake of keeping purity alive and releasing Srila Prabhupada's name from the atrocities that have become associated with it. It cannot be expected to be any different that Srila Prabhupada's name became linked to all of this. After all, it was his organization, right? No, not if it did not, and still does not, represent his mood, his teachings, and his mission. There is automatically a disconnect seeing persons dressed as devotees involved in horrific activities, and then watching those same persons sitting on a raised seat and speaking scripture being honored by the masses. Even worse, if the atrocities are going on with someone singing kirtan, displaying or otherwise defiling prayer beads, playing a recording of Srila Prabhupada in the background, or even holding a photo of Srila Prabhupada in your face while they do the most heinous, unspeakable things to your body. Like a stew made of beans and rice and vegetables, if one ingredient is rotten, it is very hard to sort it out, and usually the whole thing must be thrown out. That there are some people who have been able to sort it out, what is real, what is of immeasurable value, from the pot of rotten stew, it is remarkable. It is rare. It is praiseworthy. And I have also had to bear the sadness of hearing that some of those most dear to me cannot separate Srila Prabhupada and his teachings from what transpired. Or that others feel bound to speak smugly about Srila Prabhupada and his accomplishments, thinking that they know how to do it better. That attitude alone is offensive, and the ones who work so hard to warp the hearts of the innocent children, and even adults, will have to face that in their vast ocean of sinful reaction. If the directive given by Srila Prabhupada himself to discover the agents of Kali and remove them from the society of devotees had been followed, all or most of the atrocities could have been avoided. Looking back, I can only accept it as Krishna's special protection that I lived through these traumatic experiences. There was no other way for anyone to survive what happened. But my physical health is compromised. I live with a lot of pain, and I still process the horror, the panic, and especially the rage and the grief, not only of what happened to me, but to others, to the devotee youth, including my own children, and especially around what was done to try to thwart Srila Prabhupada's superhuman efforts to spread the pure teachings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The stories of horror that have been presented to me by devotee friends and clients who have found nowhere else to go, no one else in whom they could confide or take some solace, are so awful that had the same thing not happened to me, I'm sure I would also not have believed it was possible. Over the years, I have become increasingly embarrassed to be called a Hare Krishna. In fact, I cringe. There have been vicious rumors spread in the organization about my personal integrity and my practice. I have been accused of putting false memories in people's heads and nearly killing so-called clients who, in actuality, never came to me for any sort of care, or real clients who didn't follow protocol. I have been told that I am not welcome at most ISKCON temples, that management has been instructed not to invite me or accommodate me in any way. I have gotten calls from Europe saying that my name is mud over there and what is going on. Not particularly comfortable. I guess they have something to cover up. But for me, I don't care what happens in the organization. My goal is not to upset any organizational structure. My goal is not even to topple evil. They can do what they want to do, carte blanche, but stop doing it in Srila Prabhupada's name. For the preaching to go on, his name has to be cleared from all of the non-devotional activities, demonic activities, deviant activities that have become associated with it. Many people have told me that they won't study Srila Prabhupada's books because of what they have heard about the organization. And I know a lot of people. My practice is international. There is no bigger heartbreak than for me to hear these things from them. This has to change, and it will. I have read this section in Srimad Bhagavatam over and over again about Vidura leaving the palace of his brother, the badly influenced king Dhritarashtra, who took counsel from his envious son Duryodhana. I have embraced the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 16, and Srila Prabhupada's purport to it at the deepest levels of my heart. Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee of the Lord is never perturbed by an awkward position created by the external energy of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. A conditioned soul is absorbed in material existence under the different modes of the external energy. Absorbed in the false ego, he thinks that he is doing everything himself. The external energy of the Lord, the material nature, is fully under the control of the Supreme Lord, and the conditioned soul is fully under the grip of the external energy. Therefore, the conditioned soul is fully under the control of the laws of the Lord. But due to illusion only, he thinks himself independent in his activities. Duryodhana was acting under such influence of the external nature, by which he would be vanquished at the ultimate end. He could not accept the sound advice of Vidura, but on the contrary, he insulted that great soul, who was the well-wisher of his whole family. Vidura could understand this because he was a pure devotee of the Lord. In spite of being very strongly insulted by Duryodhana's words, Vidura could see that Duryodhana, under the influence of Maya, the external energy, was making progress on the path towards his own ruination. He therefore considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme, yet he also saw how the internal energy of the Lord helped him in this particular situation. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him. Vidura was never attracted by the royal palace of his brother. He was always ready to leave the palace and devote himself completely to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Now he got the opportunity, by the grace of Duryodhana, and instead of being sorry at the strong words of insult, he thanked him from within because it gave him the chance to live alone in a holy place and fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. The word gata vyata, without being sorry, is significant here because Vidura was relieved from the tribulations which troubled every man entangled in material activities. He therefore thought that there was no need to defend his brother with his bow because his brother was meant for ruination. Thus he left the palace before Duryodhana could act. Maya, the supreme energy of the Lord, acted both internally and externally. Where there is hypocrisy, the personality of Kali himself is welcome. There is no way to become free of the influence of this degraded age if there is not purity, if there is not integrity. Srila Prabhupada's communities and temples were meant to be an oasis in the current desert of degradation. However, there has been widespread permeation of influences that are not wholesome and do not represent Srila Prabhupada's moods, his mission, and teachings at all. There was a great Christian mentor and healer I met in 2002. When she became aware that I was with the Hare Krishnas, she looked at me very sternly and said she had prayed a lot of people out of that group. I looked at her just directly and told her that the organization and the pure spiritual essence had become separated. She appreciated that very much, as she had also been excommunicated from the church for praying over too many non-Christians. We became fast friends after that. It was a deep sisterhood that was indescribable. She left this world only 6 months after we met. It was meant to be, and we both benefited very much from knowing each other. I seek no approval from any member of the organization for the preaching that lies ahead for me. I tried to work within the organization for many years to clean up various anomalies, including the fabricated guru system, and I already described what happened along with being ridiculed, having confidences broken, and friendships destroyed. I am Srila Prabhupada's daughter, and he is my best friend and spiritual guide for eternity. We are never separated, even though he physically left this world in November of 1977. It is my passionate, loving duty, and also his personal request to me, to clear his name from what has transpired in his name, the things that don't represent his mood, his purity, and his mission. Then what he offered to the world can be appreciated by the masses of people who need this wisdom so acutely. People are looking for Krishna, even if they do not know for whom they search. Srila Prabhupada's transcendental literatures give all the information required to learn to love the Lord because How can we love someone if we don't know who he is? There is a world out there of people ready to hear the great message of the Godhead, which will give the greatest pleasure, fulfillment, and solace to everyone. There are many so-called philosophies out there that hint at higher truths, but don't offer anything of substance. Srila Prabhupada's books give substance and make the practice of spiritual life easily available to everyone. I want to see the mission that was and still is Srila Prabhupada's heart spread all over the planetary systems. I want to see the development of sustainable communities that give strength to the individual, to the spiritual aspirant, and the collective preaching mission. I want to see widespread local clusters of families and confidential friends who can gather in their homes and study and practice what Srila Prabhupada has given. I want to see trust in devotee relationships restored as we reassess ourselves and our position in this material world honestly. Towards these goals, we have created Purely Prabhupada Incorporated. Please see our website, purelyprabhupada.com, to purchase Srila Prabhupada's books and to connect with our core group and others who have enthusiasm towards creating honest and honoring spiritual association and community in accord with the pure spiritual teachings and integrity of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. I thank you very, very much for taking the time to watch this lengthy video. Please do take the time to visit us at purelyprabhupada.com. Hare Krishna.